In the far reaches of the galaxy, there is a planet no sane being dares to visit. They call it Deathworld 9, a world where the rain burns, the air bites, and the ground itself hungers. It is not a world made for life, but somehow life thrives here, violent, relentless. And into this place, the humans send their cadets. She was one of them. Lyra Kane, a cadet from Earth, young, fearless, and still foolish enough to believe she could survive this trial. When her shuttle dropped through the black clouds, she whispered to herself, "How bad could it be?" The storm answered with lightning. The ground shook as she landed. Trees taller than towers moved with the wind, or maybe they were breathing. Her scanner blinked red. No signal, no support, no mercy. She built a camp near the wreckage, a small fire, a broken radio, a pocket knife. That was all. The night came fast, darker than space itself. Every shadow seemed alive. Every sound felt closer. Then she heard it. Not a roar, but something worse. A growl so deep it rattled her bones. Something big, something ancient, was moving through the valley. She froze. The firelight flickered on her face. Her heart pounded loud enough to betray her. In that silence, the forest breathed with her. The scanner blinked again. Motion detected. She turned slowly and saw two glowing eyes between the trees, wide, golden, watching her. The apex beast. Its breath steamed in the cold air. Its body was hidden in the dark, but she could feel its weight pressing on the ground. The predator of predators. Lyra lifted her knife, knowing it meant nothing. Still, she stood her ground. Minutes felt like hours. The eyes vanished. The forest went silent again. She didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Morning came with strange marks around her camp, deep claw trails in the dirt, circling her like a warning. And on one tree, she saw me thing that didn't belong, a symbol carved by human hands. Someone had been here before. She touched the carving, tracing the lines. It was old, weathered, but still clear enough to read a single letter, H. Her radio cracked to life for a second, just static, then a whisper, "Survive." Her breath caught. She wasn't alone. The day burned hotter than fire. She climbed a ridge, trying to spot any sign of life. But all she saw was endless jungle, and bones, piles of them. Some small, some as big as ships. Deathworld 9 wasn't just killing things. It was collecting them. Lyra sat on a rock and looked at the horizon. She thought about home, about the academy, about the ones who laughed when she volunteered. Just a Deathworld cadet, they had said. Most don't come back. She smiled, though her lips were cracked. I will. She began to study the planet, watching how the beasts moved, how they avoided certain plants, how smaller creatures hid when the wind changed. Days passed. She hunted small prey. She learned where to find water that didn't burn her throat. Each mistake left a scar, but also a lesson. Then one evening, she heard that growl again, closer. The apex beast had returned. She didn't run, not this time. She crouched low, waiting, listening. The ground shook under its steps, trees snapped. But when it reached the edge of the clearing, it stopped. Its eyes glowed again, the same golden light. It tilted its head, studying her. She didn't move, didn't blink. Then, slowly, impossibly, the apex beast stepped back. One step, then another, and vanished into the forest. Lyra exhaled, trembling. She didn't understand it. But something had changed. The hunter had chosen not to kill her. Maybe it recognized her. She looked around. The forest felt different now, less like an enemy, more like it was waiting. The sky darkened again. She sat by her feet, sharpening her blade. The sound echoed softly through the trees. A rhythm. A heartbeat. In that moment, she realized something simple. Deathworld 9 wasn't testing her survival. It was watching her evolve. And somewhere out there, those golden eyes were still watching too. The jungle was awake before dawn. A strange silence covered the valley, the kind that comes before something terrible. Lyra stood on the ridge, staring at the horizon. Smoke still rose from her crashed shuttle far below, but she was no longer thinking about escape. Something had changed. The apex beast, the one that should have torn her apart, had stepped away from her last night. Why? She didn't understand it, but she could feel it. The planet was watching her, testing her, and maybe, for the first time, respecting her. She gripped her knife tighter and began walking toward the deeper jungle. The air grew heavy, hot, and full of strange whispers, like voices carried by the wind. The further she went, the older the world seemed to become. The trees twisted like giant bones, and their roots pulsed faintly, as if blood still flowed beneath the ground. Something moved beside her, fast, silent. She spun, knife ready, but nothing, only the shifting mist. Then, a shadow darted across the path, small, hunched, and crawling on 4 arms. She froze. Another shape followed, then another. Eyes, dozens of them, glimmered in the dark, lesser predators. They surrounded her, teeth glinting, growling low. One leapt, claws wide, but she ducked, rolled, and drove her knife into its side. The creature shrieked, twisting and collapsing in the dirt. The others hesitated. They had never seen prey fight like this. Lyra stood, blood dripping from her arm, and shouted, "Go on! Try me!" For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then they backed away, tails low, hissing softly. She didn't know if it was fear or confusion, but she'd take it. She was alive. When she reached the edge of the ridge, she saw something that made her heart skip. A line of blackened soil cutting through two. Jungle, straight and smooth like a road. Not natural, not random. Someone, or something, had built this. She followed it for hours, deeper into the planet's burning heart, until she came upon what looked like an old crash site. Half-buried metal, broken helmets, and a symbol, the same as the one she'd seen carved on the tree. HFY. She knelt beside it, brushing the dirt away. Her glove touched something cold, a small data chip, barely functional. She slid it into her wrist pad. The screen flickered, then showed a grainy recording. A man's voice spoke. "If you're seeing this, you've survived longer than any of us. Deathworld 9 doesn't test your body, it tests your mind. The beasts learn. The planet learns. And if it starts to respect you, it will obey you." Static. Then silence. Lyra's breath caught. Obey me? She turned toward the jungle. The wind howled through the trees, bending them ever so slightly, in her direction. A sound echoed behind her. Not a growl, not a roar. Something breathing. She turned slowly, and there it was again. The apex beast. Massive, terrifying, watching her from the shadows. This time, she didn't raise her knife. She didn't move. For a long, long moment, predator and human just stared at each other. The creature's chest rose and fell like thunder. Then, without warning, it lowered its head. Not in attack, in acknowledgement. The ground trembled beneath her feet as it walked past, brushing against her shoulder. Its fur was coarse and hot, like living metal. And then, it was gone. She stood there in the silence it left behind, realizing what had just happened. The most feared creature on the planet had bowed to her. The next days blurred into one another. She moved like she belonged to this world now, hunting, building, surviving. The smaller beasts stopped attacking. The jungle paths opened for her. Deathworld. D9 was no longer trying to kill her. It was watching, learning, following, and then the skies changed. A low hum filled the air. She looked up and saw them. Metal ships descending through the storm clouds, not human ships, sleek, silver, and covered in glowing marks. Aliens. They came in silence, scattering beams of light across the jungle. She hid behind a ridge, watching their patrols move through the trees. They carried weapons, sharp, energy-based, humming with power. They were hunting something. Then she heard them speak, in rough, broken words. Target. Apex. Alive. Capture. They weren't here for her. They were here for the beast. But if they were hunting it, they'd have to go through her world. Lyra felt something strange twist inside her. Anger. Not just survival instinct. Something else. The thought of anyone touching the apex, her apex, felt wrong. That night, she watched their camp from the shadows. The aliens laughed around their fire, unaware that 1,000 eyes glowed beyond the trees. When one of them wandered too far from the light, the forest swallowed him whole. No scream, no sound, just gone. The others panicked, weapons drawn. They fired into the trees, bolts of light cutting through the dark. But the jungle moved around them, fast, silent, alive. Lyra whispered softly, "Let them learn what it means to step on a death world." The roar that followed shook the sky. The apex beast had returned, and this time it wasn't alone. Every shadow came alive. The ground burst open. The forest turned into a storm of claws and teeth. Lyra watched from above, her face lit by the fires below. The planet had chosen its side. She whispered to herself, "You wanted a hunt. Now you've got one." The screams faded into the night. The fires burned low. And when the dawn came, Deathworld 9 was silent again. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a warning. Because somewhere in that stillness, Lyra knew this was only the beginning. The real monsters hadn't arrived yet. The jungle was beyond the earning again. But this time, it wasn't from lightning or storms. Flames climbed the sky, licking the clouds, painting Deathworld 9 in shades of red and gold. Metal fragments rained from above, the wreckage of alien ships torn apart overnight. Lyra stood on a ridge, her body covered in ash and blood. Her breathing was slow, steady, almost calm. Around her, the forest was alive with motion, predators creeping through the smoke, hunting the last of the intruders who dared to set foot here. And yet, she didn't feel safe. Because something was wrong. The apex beast, her unlikely shadow, hadn't returned since dawn, and the silence it left behind felt heavier than fear. She pressed her hand to the dirt. It vibrated faintly, like a heartbeat. Deep beneath the planet's skin, something was stirring. She remembered the alien logs, the mention of a prime apex, a creature older than the forest, older than human records, a being that ruled this world long before anyone called it Deathworld 9. And now, the aliens had woken it up. Lyra turned toward the horizon. Far away, the mountains were shifting. Not shaking, shifting. Stone cracking, trees falling, clouds bending around something massive. Whatever was moving out there was not an animal. It was a force. The smaller beasts began to flee. Her beasts. The ones that had learned not to touch her fire, the ones that now followed her scent. They were running, whimpering, looking back at her like children too afraid to disobey. Lyra whispered, "What could scare them?" The ground answered with a tremor that nearly knocked her off her feet. A deep, echoing sound followed. Not a roar, not thunder, but something far older. A sound that felt like it came from the bones of the planet itself. She stared into the smoke until she saw it. A shape, a shadow against the fire. Bigger than a shuttle. Bigger than the apex, the Mao, Prime. It moved like a mountain walking, its scales glimmering like molten rock. Each step shattered the earth, sending waves of dust into the air. Its eyes burned like dying suns, and they were looking straight at her. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Her heart hammered in her chest, her instincts screamed run, but her legs refused. Then the apex beast, her apex, appeared between them. It stood tall, roaring so loud that the trees bent from the force. The Prime tilted its head and answered. The air split open with the sound. The shockwave knocked Lyra backward, but she didn't fall. She stood, trembling, watching the two titans stare each other down. The apex turned once, looking back at her. Its golden eyes seemed to say something she couldn't understand. Then it charged. The jungle exploded. Claws met scales. Fire met shadow. The Prime struck with a single swipe that tore entire trees from the ground. The apex dodged, but barely. Lyra could only watch. This wasn't a fight she could join, not with knives, not with guns, not even with courage. Still, she couldn't look away. She realized then, this wasn't just a battle between beasts, it was a battle for her. Because she was no longer an intruder here. She was the heart of the balance, the one thing both of them could not ignore. And if one of them fell, everything would change. The Prime's tail slammed into the ground, sending a shockwave that ripped through the valley. Lyra fell hard, pain flaring through her chest. Her radio, long silent, sparked to life again. A voice, faint, mechanical, whispered, "Cadet, your vitals are unstable. Mission failed. Evac en route." She stared at it, dazed. Evacuation? After all this time? She looked up. The apex was bleeding, its roars turning ragged. The Prime crushed it under one massive claw. Lyra screamed, running toward them. "No!" She didn't know why. Maybe because that beast was the only thing that had ever understood her. Maybe because Deathworld 9 had taken everything else. She grabbed a metal spear from the wreckage and spry. Inted. Each step burned, the ground quaked beneath her. The Prime turned its monstrous head toward her, its eyes narrowing. The air around her shimmered with heat and power. Her weapon, useless against something that size, glowed faintly. She felt energy building under her feet, running through the spear, up her arm, into her heart. The ground pulsed again. It wasn't the Prime's doing. It was the planet. Deathworld 9 was helping her. She thrust the spear with every ounce of strength she had. A blinding flash, a roar that split the sky, and then silence. Smoke drifted, the Prime stumbled, its chest glowing with cracks of molten light. The apex, battered and bleeding, rose again beside her. For one heartbeat, human and beast stood together. Then the Prime collapsed, shaking the ground like an earthquake. Lyra fell to her knees, panting, her hands still shaking. The apex leaned close, its golden eyes soft now, almost proud. She reached out, touching its snout gently. "You're free now," she whispered. The creature blinked once, then turned and disappeared into the fog. When she looked up, the alien ships were gone, only ashes remained. But far above, the stars were moving, faint streaks of light in orbit. Something, or someone, was watching. And Lyra Kane realized, Deathworld 9 might be hers now, but the galaxy would come for it next. The planet rumbled once more, low and distant, like a warning. The beasts howled together in the night, and from the darkness a whisper seemed to rise. She trained on a Deathworld. Now the universe will learn her name. The wind screamed through the broken valleys of Deathworld 9. It carried ash, dust, and something else. Voices. Whispers too soft to understand, too human to ignore. Lyra stood alone on the cliffside, staring at the corpse of the Prime Apex. Its body stretched for miles, glowing faintly like cooling metal. Steam rose from the cracks in its hide, hissing into the night air. The wind screamed through the broken valleys of Deathworld 9. It carried ash, dust, and something else. Voices. Whispers too soft to understand, too human to ignore. Lyra stood alone on the cliffside, staring at the corpse of the prime apex, its body stretched for miles, glowing faintly like cooling metal. Steam rose from the cracks in its hide, hissing into the night air. She had killed a god, but victory felt wrong. The jungle was quiet again. Too quiet. The smaller beasts, those that once watched her from the shadows, were gone. Even the air felt empty, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, the sky moved. A shimmer of light passed above her, like the reflection of 1,000 eyes. The stars bent, then straightened. A faint hum followed, a sound she had heard only once before. A ship, but not alien, not fully. It was human. Her wrist pad flickered to life for the first time in weeks. Signal acquired. Human craft inbound. Retrieval protocol initiated. Retrieval? Now? After everything? She watched as the craft descended through the atmosphere, wrapped in white fire. It didn't land. It hovered. A perfect circle of wind tore the trees below it, flattening everything in a storm of heat and dust. A voice echoed through her comms. "Cadet Lyra Kane, this is Command Unit 03. You have completed your survival phase. Please remain still for extraction." Her lips parted. Survival phase? She stared at the wrecked landscape, the beasts, the ashes, the blood. This wasn't training, this was war. The ship's light brightened until it burned her eyes. A beam reached down, surrounding her like a cage of gold. But as she lifted from the ground, something deep inside the planet screamed. The ground cracked beneath her feet. Roots burst from the soil, wrapping around the light. The jungle fought the beam, fought the ship itself. The world didn't want to let her go. Her comms filled with static, then a different voice spoke. Not human, not alien, something in between. Memories flashed. Every wound, every hunt, every death she had survived. The Prime's blood, the Apex's eyes, the rhythm of the planet. It was all inside her now. When the pain stopped, she fell to her knees. Her reflection in the pool beside her was no longer fully human. Her eyes glowed faint gold. Her skin shimmered like the beasts she'd fought. The ghosts stepped back, bowing their heads. The new keeper rises. Lightning split the sky. Rain fell in sheets of fire. In the distance, the human ship was retreating, shrinking to a single spark in the clouds. They were leaving her behind. Or maybe they had always planned to. Lyra stood slowly, her breath steady, her heart beating with the planet's rhythm. Deathworld 9 had taken everything from her, and in return, had made her something else. A whisper moved through the jungle, carried by the wind, echoing across the burning hills. She trained on a Deathworld. Now the Deathworld lives through her. And far above, in the black sea of stars, fleets began to move again. They had seen the signal. They were coming. But this time, they wouldn't be hunting a cadet. They'd be facing a world with a name. Lyra Kane. The galaxy slept, but Deathworld 9 did not. Weeks had passed since the storm, the day Lyra Kane became something no one understood. The jungle no longer fought her. It moved with her. When she walked, the vines shifted aside. When she breathed, the wind obeyed. She was no longer a cadet, no longer human. She was something the planet had made, half flesh, half fury. Yet even gods could feel alone. Each night she climbed to the cliffs and stared at the sky, watching human ships blink like cold stars. They hadn't returned for her. They had abandoned her. Or maybe they feared what she had become. But tonight, the stars were moving again. A faint shimmer spread across the horizon, forming a shape she recognized too well. A fleet, not one ship, dozens, maybe hundreds. And these weren't rescue crafts. They came armed. Her pulse synced with the ground beneath her. The forest stirred. "They are coming," a voice whispered through the trees. One of the specters, the lost cadets now bound to the soil. Lyra didn't answer. She just stared at the clouds where flashes of light marked engines igniting in orbit. Then she said quietly, "Let them come." The first drop pods fell before dawn. They hit like meteors, tearing craters into the jungle, turning stone to molten glass. Armored soldiers spilled out, moving with precision. Their suits bore the insignia of the Human Federation Expeditionary Command. Humans, her own kind. Lyra crouched above the valley, her heart splitting between fury and disbelief. She could hear their orders through the comms still built into her wrist. Priority 1. Contain and extract the hybrid subject. Use lethal force if necessary. Hybrid subject. That was what they called her now. The forest began to shake. Every creature felt it, the hum of death approaching. The beast that once bowed to her whim growled low, uneasy. She touched the ground. "Hide," she whispered. The vines swallowed them in silence. Then she stepped forward. Her footsteps left prints that glowed faintly, like fire trapped beneath the soil. The soldiers advanced, scanners sweeping. "Motion ahead," one muttered. Before he could finish, the jungle moved. Roots burst from the ground, wrapping around his legs and dragging him screaming into the dark. Others fired blindly into the trees, bolts of light cutting through mist, but their shots hit nothing. A whisper passed through their ranks, target unseen, movement everywhere. Then Lyra walked out of the smoke. Her eyes glowed golden, her body shimmered like the air itself bent around her. One soldier froze. "God help us, Cess." He looked at them with something colder than anger. "You shouldn't have come." They opened fire. Bolts hit her chest, burning through her torn armor, but the planet healed her. The ground pulsed with each wound, absorbing the pain, feeding it back as light. She raised her hand. The soil cracked. From beneath, vines as thick as metal cables exploded upward, slamming into the soldiers, crushing armor like tin. It was over in seconds. Silence returned. Only one soldier remained, trembling, staring up at her. "Why?" he whispered. "You're one of us." Lyra stepped closer, her voice low and tired. "I was one of you." She leaned in. "Until you left me here." She turned away before he could answer. The vines did the rest. Hours later, she stood in the center of the valley where the prime apex had fallen. The soil still glowed faintly, pulsing like a heart. More ships were descending now. The fleet wasn't stopping. Above the horizon, something enormous entered orbit, a dreadnought bigger than any vessel humanity had ever built. Its shadow darkened half the planet. She felt the hum of its engines through her bones. "Command's not here to capture," one of the ghosts said softly. "They're here to erase." Lyra closed her eyes. The wind around her turned hot and heavy. Then they'll learn what it costs to erase a Deathworld. She reached out, pressing her palm against the glowing soil. The pulse spread like lightning. Every tree, every root, every creature on the planet answered the call. From the forests came roars that shook the clouds. From the oceans rose shadows bigger than ships. The whole world awakened. In orbit, the dreadnought's captain gave the order. Planetary cleansing, full strike authorization. The cannons fired. Columns of light speared through the sky, smashing into the surface with explosions that could be seen from space. But before the dust cleared, the fire turned blue. The beams curved, bent backward, slammed into the dreadnought's shields. The crew screamed. Instruments failed. Something was bending the laws of physics. A cold wind swept through the valley. Lightning flashed, not in the sky, but underground. For a heartbeat, the dirt turned transparent, revealing an enormous shape beneath the surface. A machine. Massive. Alien. Buried for millennia. Lyra stumbled back, her voice shaking. "This world isn't natural." "No," the ghost said. "It was never meant to be. It was built. By hands that came long before your kind. A weapon disguised as a planet." The ghost's form distorted, his voice cracking with static. "You merged with it, Lyra. You woke its mind. Now, it will finish what it was made to do." The ground split open with a roar. Mountains cracked like glass. Rivers boiled. From the depths, something began to rise. A shape of black metal and red light, the size of a continent. It clawed its way upward, tearing through rock and jungle, casting shadows across the horizon. A machine, but breathing, alive, ancient. The world itself had been just a shell for this thing, a slumbering war construct from an age forgotten. Lyra fell to her knees, clutching her chest as pain surged through her. The pulse she'd felt for weeks now thundered violently inside her skull. "Stop!" she gasped. "Stop!" The voice that answered wasn't human. It came from inside her mind. "You are our key, our heart. You woke us. You will lead us." "No," she whispered. "I didn't mean, you are Deathworld." The sky tore open. A beam of red light shot upward, splitting the clouds and stabbing into the void where the fleet once orbited. And the stars came back. But they weren't stars. They moved. They blinked back. Ships. Thousands of them. Not human. Not even from this galaxy. Responding to the ancient call. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Whatever the Deathworld had once served, it had just summoned home. She stumbled backward, the world shaking around her. The air was electric, full of voices whispering her name. Lyra Kane, keeper of the core. The signal. She screamed and slammed her fists into the ground. "I didn't ask for this!" The jungle twisted violently, as if in pain. The machine rising from the planet's crust paused, almost listening. Then, silence. Her tears hit the dirt, glowing faintly as they sank into the soil. The voice inside her softened. "You cannot undo what you are, but you can choose how you use it." The words echoed deep within her chest. She looked up at the sky full of awakening stars, and something inside her hardened. If those things were coming here, then maybe this planet wasn't a curse after all. Maybe it was a fortress. She wiped the blood from her lip and stood tall, feeling the jungle's pulse rise with hers. The ancient machine continued to rise behind her, its towering frame blotting out the horizon, its energy lighting the clouds crimson. Lyra stared at it, the planet's core, now alive again, and said quietly, "Then let them come." Hours later, she stood at the summit of what had once been a mountain, now the shoulder of the awakened construct. It was still fusing with the planet's crust, drawing power from the molten rivers below. Through her connection, she could see across the void. The incoming fleet stretched across the black like an ocean of silver knives. Their transmissions hummed in her head, orders in a language she didn't understand, but somehow felt. Signal origin confirmed. Target, Core World 9. Objective, reclaim or destroy. Reclaim. That single word made her heart go cold. These weren't random invaders. They had built this place. Deathworld 9 had once been theirs, and now they wanted it back. Lyra clenched her fists. "They'll have to take it from me." The construct beneath her stirred, its eyes, massive circular cores, blazing with red light. Its voice echoed across. The land, deep and resonant. Command acknowledged. Defense protocols restored. Pillars rose from the surface, ancient weapons coming to life after thousands of years. Energy hummed through the air. From orbit, the fleet opened fire. The night turned to day as plasma rained down. Lyra's eyes flared gold. She reached her hands toward the sky, and the planet responded. A storm of magnetic energy erupted upward, catching the plasma in midair and bending it back. Beams curved through the clouds, slamming into the attacking ships, tearing them apart. The first wave fell in minutes, but more kept coming. She could feel her strength fading. Every pulse she gave to the planet burned through her like fire. Her vision blurred, her body shaking. Still, she refused to fall. "I started this," she whispered. "I'll finish it." The construct's voice boomed again. Heart synchronization declining. Recommend rest. She smiled faintly. "Can't. Not yet." She closed her eyes. For one brief moment she saw the stars again, the way they used to look, before the wars, before the silence. And then she said something the world would remember forever. I am Lyra Kane. I was born human. I became Deathworld. And I will make sure no one forgets what humanity can do. The machine roared in answer, its cannons igniting with light that split the heavens. The fleets above burned. The planet below shook. And in that moment, between destruction and creation, Lyra Kane became legend. The battle had ended, or so the silence tried to pretend. But silence on Deathworld 9 never lasted. The smoke still hung in the sky, the air still hot with plasma residue, and the horizon glowed faintly red where fragments of broken ships burned as they fell. Lyra stood on a ledge of molten stone, her eyes dull with exhaustion. Every breath hurt. Her skin shimmered faintly with gold and gray, her veins pulsing in time with the planet's wounded heartbeat. She had won, for now. But deep, inside her, she knew the truth. This was not the end. The fleets that came before were scouts. The real enemy hadn't even arrived yet. The ground beneath her shifted. Slow, deliberate. The giant construct, the world's hidden core, was no longer a weapon of fire and noise. It was healing itself, and it was speaking to her. Energy levels dropping. Outer defenses at 47%. Incoming mass signatures detected beyond orbit. Lyra's head pounded with the rhythm of the message. The words weren't just sound. They vibrated through her bones. "How many?" she whispered. The answer came as light in her vision. Thousands of points in motion. An entire armada. Her chest tightened. Then it's true. They're all coming back. The machine's voice, calm and vast, replied, "The Makers return for what was once theirs." Lyra turned to the black horizon. Not anymore. Hours passed in a haze of preparation. The planet's crust split open along glowing fault lines, exposing ancient machinery that had slept beneath its surface since before human history. Towers rose like spines, humming with energy. Rivers boiled into streams of blue fire. All across the planet, the creatures of Deathworld stirred. The beasts she had once feared, and later commanded, emerged from the forests and mountains. Their roars shook the valleys. They were ready. But Lyra was not. Her connection to the planet came at a cost. Each surge of power left her weaker, more distant from her remaining humanity. Her reflection in the molten pools showed what she refused to accept. Her eyes glowed brighter now, and faint silver patterns crawled up her arms like vines of light. She wasn't just bonded with the world anymore. She was becoming it. Then, just before dawn, a new sound filled the air. Not thunder, not battle, a deep, perfect note, like a voice carried across time itself. The stars shimmered and beat, until space itself cracked open. From the fracture poured light, thousands of beams that coalesced into forms too massive for her mind to understand. They weren't ships, they were beings. Tall, geometric, faceless things woven from energy and memory. The Makers. They descended slowly, filling the horizon with colorless light. "World 9, they said, their voices merging into one impossible tone. "Our weapon calls to us. Return control." Lyra's pulse quickened. "I'm not your weapon. You are its heart. You carry what we left. You will obey." The sky burned white. Every creature on the planet screamed as the air itself became heavy with pressure. Lyra fell to one knee, clutching her head. Their presence felt like 1,000 minds pressing into hers, trying to take back what they'd lost. She fought back, but her strength faltered. The planet screamed with her, trembling violently. Then something new stirred inside her. Not the voice of the planet, not the echo of the ghosts. Something deeper. Her own voice. "Get out of my head!" The ground exploded with light. A pulse of golden fire erupted outward, slamming into the invading energy forms. The sky shattered again, fragments of light falling like rain. For the first time, the Makers hesitated. Impossible. The heart rejects control. Lyra rose, blood trickling from her nose, eyes blazing. "You built this world to destroy." She took a step forward, the planet shaking with her anger. "But you forgot something." The air rippled with her voice. "You built it on life, and life fights back." The forests ignited in blue flame, not burning, transforming. The trees became crystal towers, amplifying her power. The beasts roared and charged into the light. A war between gods began. The Makers unleashed their wrath. Beams of antimatter light cut through the planet's crust, tearing chunks of the world into orbit. But every wound they made, the planet sealed again, through her. Each strike hurt, but it made her stronger. The connection deepened until her thaw. HTS no longer felt separate from the storm. The machine's voice, now part of her own mind, whispered, "You cannot win by force. You must end the code." "End it how?" she shouted into the chaos. "The seed at the core, the first design. Destroy it, and we are free." Free. It was a word she hadn't dared to hope for. But to reach the core, she would have to go beneath everything, through the layers of molten machinery, through the planet's memory itself. She looked once more at the sky. The Makers were regrouping, their light forming a new shape, a single colossal hand descending from orbit. There was no time left. She turned to the jungle, her army of beasts, her guardians, her only family left in this cursed world. "Protect the surface," she said. Her voice was low, steady, commanding. "If I fail, make sure they never find what's below." Then she stepped to the edge of the crater, took one breath, and dove into the burning light. The world swallowed her whole. The descent felt endless. She fell through rivers of molten metal, through clouds of memory and code. Images flashed before her eyes, the first humans who had trained here, the wars that birthed the Deathworlds, the Makers forging this place from stars and sorrow. And then she saw it. At the very center of the planet lay a sphere of perfect black glass, pulsing once every few seconds like a slow heartbeat. The seed, the source. It whispered to her, not in words, but in feelings. You could rule them all. Her body trembled. Visions flooded her mind, of galaxies bending to her will, of stars dying at her whisper, of immortality and power. The offer was simple. Take control, become everything. But she remembered the first night she landed here. The cold air, the fear, the human heartbeat that refused to stop. "No," she said softly. "I'm done being someone's weapon." She raised her hand. The world's power surged through her one last time. Her body became light. Her voice became thunder. "You taught me to survive. Now learn what it means to live." She struck the seed. Darkness folded over the planet like a blanket of ash. The battle was over, but peace hadn't come. It never truly came on Deathworld 9. Lyra awoke on the edge of the new crater, her body weightless for a moment before gravity remembered her. Every muscle screamed, her hands were burned, her throat dry as dust. When she opened her eyes, the world was different. No more fire, no more storms. The sky was clear, so clear she could see the arc of the galaxy beyond. But there was something wrong about that silence. It wasn't calm. It was waiting. She pushed herself upright, her palms sinking into the warm, glass-smooth soil. The entire surface had hardened into dark crystal after the seed's explosion. The jungle had regrown, but twisted. Leaves gleamed like mirrors, trees pulsed with faint golden veins. Deathworld 9 had evolved again, and it had evolved with her. Lyra looked at her reflection in one of the glassy stones. Her face was still human, but her eyes were no longer just eyes. They shimmered, faint gold around the edges, black at the center like a star collapsing in slow motion. A whisper followed. "You destroyed the seed, but something still grows beneath." She froze. It wasn't the planet's voice. It came from inside her. Far below the crust, in the shattered caverns where the seed had once pulsed, something faint still moved, slow, steady, alive. Fragments of the seed had survived. They were spreading like roots. Lyra clenched her fists. "No, not again." She took a step forward, and the world reacted. Her step echoed for miles, a tremor of light shooting through the forest. Beasts lifted their heads, trees turned. The planet was listening. She whispered, "Show me." The ground split open before her, forming a spiral path downward, glowing with faint amber light. She descended. The deeper she went, the hotter the air became. Her breath came out in small bursts of steam. The walls around her pulsed like veins. Each beat was faster than the last. And then she saw it. The seed's remnants had fused into something new, smaller, sharper, alive. It wasn't a machine anymore. It was growing flesh. The metal glistened with veins and muscle, pulsing in time with the planet. Lyra stared, horrified. The world had learned from her. It was copying her. "Humanity adapts," the whisper said inside her mind. "So does Deathworld." She backed away, but the ground behind her sealed shut. She was trapped. The fleshy metal shifted, forming a shape. A hand. A face. Her face. It smiled. "You freed the world, Lyra Kane. But freedom is not the same as peace." Her twin stepped out of the light, skin rippling with silver and gold. Its eyes were mirrors. She felt her heartbeat stutter. The same rhythm echoed from both of them. "What are you?" she whispered. "I am balance," it said softly. "You are chaos." It raised its hand, and the walls shook. Above ground, beasts howled as the planet convulsed. The jungle turned against itself. Lyra reached for her knife, but it melted into her palm. The world refused to obey her. "You killed the seed," her reflection said, voice calm as rain. "So I became the new one." "No," Lyra hissed. "I won't let you. You don't have a choice. You are me." The two forms blurred, light and shadow circling like twin storms. Lyra lunged. The reflection met her halfway. They collided. Every thought she'd ever had, every scar, every scream, every drop of rage and mercy flashed between them. She saw herself as a cadet again, standing on the barren surface of Deathworld 9. She saw the apex beast bowing, the primes fall, the fleets burning, the seed cracking. And then she saw what came next, futures that had not happened yet. A deathworld that spread like infection, worlds bending to its will, stars dying. Her name whispered as a curse. Lyra fell to her knees, gasping. "No, that can't be me." The reflection crouched in front of her. "It already is." Then it placed its hand on her chest. Pain tore through her. The world around them exploded with white light. When Lyra opened her eyes again, she was standing on the surface once more. The crater was gone. The air was cold. Her hands trembled. Her reflection was gone. But in the distance, far beyond the mountains, she saw a glow rising, a second sun forming at the horizon, the new seed. The voice whispered again, soft as breath, against her ear. "You cannot destroy what you've taught to live." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "I'll find a way," she said. She looked up at the sky one last time. The stars were beautiful again, too beautiful for what was coming. And then she started walking toward the light. Every step echoed through the planet, through the beasts, through the heart of Deathworld 9 itself. Because the war wasn't over. It had just changed shape. The world had learned to fight. And now, it wanted to learn to rule.